who is the best playable character in FF7 Rebirth. Now, of course, again, this tier list is Rebirth, talking about part 2, not the whole game, right, on all the characters. That being said, I would be very surprised if this changed in the next game, because the best character in part 1 is still basically the best character in this game as well, so they haven't changed much, right? And there is some fundamental parts of how the game can actually work that make some character less good or bad, right? So if you don't know, guys, I'm a game designer, game developer, blah blah, for many years, and I love talking about combo system particularly, and especially then, of course, game mechanics with combo systems. And I do feel I have quite a knack for making tier lists, and I think that my skill is that I can play the game honestly for like an hour, and I can tell you immediately basically who's the best or worst character, right? Because some stuff, for example, Yuffie is a hybrid character. She's both melee and range. That already makes her a better character than half the tier list, basically. And you can tell it immediately if you play the game. Anyway, I digress, guys. If you guys please subscribe, press the like button. I would like to also do a party tier list, right? That will be much longer though, and I want to play the game more. I play the game for like 100 hours now, but I want to play the game even more, right, and really study that. If I make that tier list, that will be a very long tier list. We're talking about the actual different combos, right? So I'm talking about, you know, Barret, Aerith, Cloud, you know, Aerith, Tifa, Cloud, so on. And there will be, yeah, there's so many combinations, right? So I might make that tier list, and honestly, might be more interesting, right, you know? Because there are certain teams in this game that makes no sense. For example, in the game, again, no spoilers here really, but it's a very minor thing. In the game, as a portion of the Rebirth, you have to play as Barret and Red at the same time, right? So very minor spoiler, yeah. That's a terrible team up. Like, that is by far the two worst characters to have in your team. So I can say it immediately here. If I make that, and I want you guys to press the right button so on, so on. If I make the video, if you want to see the video right, I can probably already now say that the worst team up, the worst synergy is, again then, Barret and Red. I mean, the two tanks, right? You know, the two heaviest tank dudes at the same time. It's pretty bad combo, just straight up, right? But now then, let's talk about the characters. And I got links below for a bunch of what tiers I made in my life, you know, Fire Emblem tier list, Bowling tier list, but anyway, tier list, FF7. So immediately, let's say immediately was the worst character, right? Red. Red is trash, okay? He's trash tier, terrible character. I'll say it here immediately. No other character in FF7 Rebirth is trash except Red. Red is by far the worst playable character. You should never have it in your party. I dread every time you force to have it in your party. I started the first maybe 10 hours in this game playing with Red, because he's one of my favorite characters. This is my favorite character, I digress. But Red is like my number 2, I suppose. And he's just a terrible character, right? Immediately when I sorted him out, I was like, yeah, the party is much better now. And he's just not good with any combination. Of course, as I mentioned, he's the worst character with Barret, so you can probably see why he's going to be top, bottom, or something like that, right? So why is Red so terrible then? Well, Red is terrible because he's a counter character, right? And this game is tremendously much so that your greatest defense is offense, right? And so Red truly is ultimate trashy character. He's just incredibly bad, seriously. He's such a bad character because you have to take damage to do damage, right? And yes, he has like lifesteal and he has some cool buffs and haste and so on. But the problem is that having to wait for your opponent to attack you is terrible in this game. Now, this is FF16, where the character are just like basically AFKing for 10 minutes, but still, you can hit the enemy like 10 times over while guarding, right? So guarding in the game is terrible. You never want to guard, basically. You rather want to evade. And of course, you can like time guard with Red, and then get your meter up and so on. It's like terrible, but it takes so much time to get your meter up with him. And then most of his abilities, half of them, are locked behind then having to guard, then changing your stance to like the counter stance, like lifesteal stance. Then you can use the ability. For like 2 of the B, you can get like haste and everyone, which is pretty good, right? But you have to first guard into that and so on. And some bosses and enemies takes forever to hit Red, so you have to like use provoke with him and be attacked by them. But even if you are like provoking and like taunting with him, right, they still will attack you that quickly. So any other character in the game, even Aerith and Barret, are kind of slow characters, even they can like generate 2, 3 out the B, maybe even 4 or 5 out the B before Red can do haste on everyone. So basically any other character, especially of course Tifa and Yuffie, can haste everyone like way before Red can haste everyone. Like it takes like, half the time probably, at worst, yeah. So he's just a dreadfully bad character. And again, most of his special abilities are stuff you can have with magic, right? You know, he doesn't do high damage. He doesn't do particularly good. He's somewhat supportive character. And the thing is that you might imagine that Red will be playable as long as you like have him in your party and you don't play him actively. The thing is that the AI in this game, right, actively goes after the player. So if the player is playing Red, you get attacked the most frequently, right? And that means you have incredibly low DPS compared to playing like Tifa, Yuffie, and so on. But if you then have Red outside your, controlling, so he's just there with you, and you give him provoking so on, okay, fine, but then he still gets attacked little because you are the player. so yeah, most of it aims at you, right? Even if you use provoking so on. So he's just like it's a dreadfully bad system, okay? Countering again doesn't work. And lastly, this takes you to the best character in the game, right? Because in this game, you gain damage by doing damage, right? The more you attack, the more you generate ATB, so the more stuff you can do, right? Means that having high attack speed and being like a fast attacker is better because you can do more stuff in the game. So it's a weird game because at certain boss fights, it's like terrible being, for example, Tifa, because you have to attack the enemy so you can use your abilities, right? And the boss is like flying around and shooting stuff at you, so you can't attack it really easily, and then it's hard being melee, right? So range is better to be in that sense, in some fights, definitely. So Red is like, oh, he can't hit stuff, and he's countering. Yeah, he's also melee. It's terrible. It's just terrible. But that being said, right, you have to generate ATB, and that comes to the best character in the game because I'm doing S tier and trash tier in the beginning usually, right? In most of my videos. And bam, of course, Tifa is S tier. She's amazing. She's broken. Just in the last game, right? So Tifa is by far the best character in Remake Part 1. Of course, that gave me a fewer characters, so lesser to pick from. But she is like absolutely the S tier in that game, and the other characters are basically like B tier at best compared to her. The thing is that, just as I mentioned, right, in this game you gain abilities by doing abilities. Basically, the more you hit them, the more stuff you can do, right? So Tifa's DPS in this game is like double every other character. Like she's insanely powerful, just like in the last game then. Because you hit very quickly, right? You gain ATB faster, you haste yourself, right? As you probably know, she is the only character who can buff her own attacks very easily with her like strength buff to herself, right? That stacks with bravery and also stacks with her medical buff herself. So Tifa can both give herself more strength, so more basic attack damage, right? So you can also infuse magic on her attacks. She punches with magic attacks, right? So now she's doing like physical plus magic damage at the same time here. And hastening her and bravery, so she does like insane damage by her attacks. And by doing very quick attacks and having a better like attack pattern and so on, right? She can then do more abilities, which she can spam then, right? And if you spam her Star Shower, which you get from the mini game, some medium up below, links below for that my video, how to get the best weapon. If you spam her best ability, it increases your damage for your next ability, and it hits everything. It hits really hard for one guy and also everyone else around it. It's like cleave damage or AoE, whatever you call it. It's basically a cleave, and it combines. It's just like insane damage. You can see my live stream playing this game. When you play the different like enemy intels with Tifa, right? Suddenly you're doing like, you have like 2 minutes on you, and you finish it like 1 minute, 5 seconds left. You do it like a minute, yeah. You have like, some of the feeding tests, I have been under leveled and finished them in like 5-10 seconds with Tifa. So as you get your combo going, and they all just die immediately, right? Like every feeding test, but you have to do something weird, like interrupt them before they transform or before they heal or whatever. Basically every that time, Tifa is the best character, except one other character coming to now then, which is also an S tier character, and then of course it's Cait. So Cait is also really great. Cait is amazing. Like seriously, Cait in this game, he's like broken. So everything said with Tifa is still true, of course, but it's one character that's actually better than Tifa at doing quests and so on. That's Cait. Because if you're struggling with a boss, right, or like a special feeding test, you have to interrupt this bird before they transform, before they heal or something, blah blah. Cait can do it easily because Cait is like roll dice thing. If you roll the correct dice, you basically win immediately. So if you're struggling and you're under leveled or whatever, bam, cast it, like, you know. And I want to point it out to that. When I make my tier list, I say it every time, but I usually make them based on, all the way through it, from level 1 to max level and doing the hard stuff. Like Cait is like the best guy for questing, him and Tifa. Tifa core is the best DPS all the way through, absolutely. But he performs amazingly. another thing with Cait, which is very, very good, this makes him an ST character, is that he can always like roll the magic you need. So if you go into a battle, you don't know what the enemy can do. Are they fire, or the ice, or the water, so to speak, right? What Pokemon type are they? Cait can just roll that. So Cait, you don't need to have materia on him to be the correct materia, right? Because you can just get it from your ability anyway. It means that you can have him completely empty of offensive materia, so you can have him only with like buffs and debuffs, deep protect, haste, and so on, purely like a supportive character. But he can still do the highest damage because he can always roll out the correct ability anyway. And also his weird luck abilities, they do insane damage. Like he sees a crazy end when he dies in the game, the Moogle still fights. So on the hard boss fights, he's still like the most interesting character, because I usually play him as my main lead, right? So you take the most damage, you die with him, the Moogle still does half your damage, and there's some bosses, the Moogle fortune punch thing does like half their max life point, like insane high damage, like it's crazily weird. He can cast is crazy, he can like summon your summoning during combat as an ability, and so on. He has so many abilities, it's crazy. He basically has by far the best ability in the game. Like all his special abilities are crazy good. Like insanely good. But again, Tifa does way higher damage now. Tifa is really broken. And then basically the last character I will bring up, and she's also ST seriously, and that's Yuffie, okay? So, and Yuffie is ST, right? In a very similar way like Cait. These are my 3 characters I played the whole game, and all the characters are just terrible compared to them, seriously. So Yuffie, just like Cait, can change her element, right? Which is very, very powerful. Basically, on every boss you encounter, every quest you don't know what to do, right? Yuffie can be like, oh, this guy wind weak, wind attack damage, right? Fire weak, or I use my fire magic, right? So you can convert her weapon into whatever thing you need to do, which is very, very good. It's even better, because some of the bosses will change the element with that. And the harder bosses, some of them can alter their weakness. Then Yuffie is amazing, right? Because she can then change her strength against them, right? Very, very good. Same with Cait, right? So they both have this like elemental advantage, right? With special, okay. Now Yuffie is probably better than Cait because she's also a ranged character, and he's also a ranged character. Thing is that honestly they're both kind of similar because they're both melee and ranged depending on what you do, right? So in some encounters you wanna be ranged because it's like, oh, it's a flying enemy or whatever, right? But in some other encounters you wanna be melee, and on some bosses you actually wanna be both, right? These 2 characters are hybrid. They can change how you tangle with them. Especially Yuffie, she can teleport after them, she can be ranged, she can be melee, she can be all that, right? So she's like a no-brainer ST character. She's so much better than Cloud, and even better than Red, of course, and much better than also than Aerith and Tifa. And I mean, yeah, it's just crazy. And the combination, I would say, was the best in the game, probably, just straight up, which I've used the most in the game, is Tifa and Yuffie. This is like the best combo, like straight up. But the best team in the game is this team, right? You have like, I think so, crazy, yeah. The best team in FF7 is like Cait as your main character, and you're playing as Yuffie and Tifa, and you swap between them constantly, use their abilities, and you have Cait as your main tank guy and support guy. This is like the best team, man. Like it's crazy good. Like so, that's probably the best characterization. But I think this is probably the correct team. Maybe Yuffie here, which is also very adaptable. But yeah, but like I said, everything I said with Tifa is true with Yuffie, right? Because she hits faster, got ATB, it's just much better, right? She gains so much ability, and Yuffie is probably the best character in the game to also limit break. She's amazing at getting limit breaks very quickly. Cait, on the hand, though, he's the best character to trigger with. Because Cait, when he hits you, when you summon the Moogle of the Cait, right? It costs you 1 ATB, but if it hits an opponent with the summoning, you regain that ATB. If you hit more than 1 opponent, you get 2 ATB, up to 3 ATB, of course. So Cait can basically like freely use ATB when it's on cooldown, so you can get ATB faster. Yuffie is really fast. Yuffie cast together, you can spam their like synchro ability very, very easily. But Cait is probably the best character to do triggers with. Yeah, he constantly gets synchro all the time. And then Yuffie, because she's a faster character, again, right? So again, speed and having like weird specials is the best thing. But again, Tifa is the crown, the queen, right? Because she can like buff herself so much that her damage is becomes absurd, right? Yeah, so many bosses in this game where I had Tifa, because I keep saying Tifa main team, right? So many bosses I defeat them in a few minutes, a few seconds, immediately, right? Just get all the buffs to Tifa, and like her combos are doing like half their life points immediately, like insane. So some boss fights, even on playing course on dynamic and so playing on hard difficulty, they die in like a few seconds. Like a crazy, insane OP how she is. After you trigger her like 4 or 5 buffs on her, yeah, they... And of course you got to debuff the boss, right? Yeah, but it's just insane. And no other character can compare to that at all when she gets going completely. Yuffie is better when the bosses are hard to hit, you know, and they have a lot of ability to counter you, and they're flying around and so on. Then her hybrid thing is better. And Cait is an amazing character no matter what you face. Cait, again, is the most hybrid character that can do anything that you need, right? So these are the top tier characters. Tifa, I just point out again, she's more limited than both Yuffie and Cait, but because she does damage so incredibly well, she's still she's like, you know, overcome them anyway. But I will say it's hard to pick who's the best character because she's definitely way more limited than these two characters. But again, she doubled their damage, so you know. So having said what you said, right, I think you can probably get where I'm coming from. The other characters aren't as good because they don't generate ATB that fast, right? Simply don't. They don't shoot as fast. Well, in Barret's case, he kind of shoots fast, but he generates very little ATB per attack course. But basically, you don't get enough meter, right? And nothing is really special with Cloud, seriously. Cloud is kind of dear. He's actually one of the worst characters because he has like decent DPS, but he's far from Yuffie and Tifa. Doesn't have as much, you know, supportive as Cait. And has a lot of supportive stuff. So actually, Cloud's pretty bad, you know. Cloud honestly pretty good character. He's very mid. He's actually almost trash tier. He's like, yeah, nothing special. You know, he's the main character. It honestly feels kind of, you know, kind of classic. I think in a lot of video games, the main character is the worst character, including many FF games, because, you know, they're kind of like, little good at everything. He really is mid, you know. Yeah, it's like, he's kind of DPS, he can do some other stuff a little bit, little tanky, but not the best tanky, a little fast, but the fastest. It's like a little bit of that, but he actually lacks utility a lot, though. He's not even that all around, honestly. So he's just kind of a bad character. He doesn't really, you know, he's just jack of all trades except supportive. So actually not even that, I said. And I don't know how to really explain it. I really think so. He's like a jack of all trade minus utility, which again means that he doesn't jack of all trade. I know I'll say it twice now, but how else would you explain it? He's basically like he's trying to be mid. He's not even mid. I think he's almost trashy. He's definitely the second weak character, and you have to force to play with him all the time. I know he's terrible. And then Barret is probably like C tier because he's tanky, but you very rarely you need this thing to be tanky. Of course, while Red is also even terrible, right? He has a lot of max health, which you can get with all character by doing materia. And this actually is more useful than Red because some bosses will do like insane, you know, one ability strike that does like 9,000 damage or whatever. So you need to either have shell up and barrier and so on, or just have like max health points. And that's why Barret, of course, you know, overcomes Red easily, right? And especially mid game where his health gets kind of really high, have some materia on him. Suddenly he's like double everyone's health points. You can survive a lot of boss fights. So good at going for him. He also has a support ability. He can like tank, he can take the damage, so on. Again, also not very useful, but he can like, you know, like absorb damage for the other characters, so on, which is okay. But on the same time, it's like, you know, if you play as him, you will just take much more damage because the AI won't avoid, right? So you can use that. But sometimes if you play against the other character like Tifa, and Barret is tanking for Tifa, like absorbing her damage, and you are Tifa, it might be useful. So there's some encounters where that's probably where he really shines, where you're like, I can't really avoid the boss abilities, and I want to be fully glass clear DPS so he can protect me from that, even though I'm evading most of the abilities. So, but I think Barret is okay. He really is like kind of C tier, not amazing ever. And Aerith, the last character then, is like B tier. Slightly better, very waifu-y, but seriously, this is the utility. So Aerith has obviously a lot of utility, right? Of course, Aerith has all the best, supportive skills. She can heal everyone. Her limit break is a heal everyone, which again usually is really useless compared to everything else in the game, because you rather do damage almost always. But sometimes having the healing can be better. So it's like at least she has it going for her. She's different, right? Some of her wards are really good sometimes. Again, she's like, I think typically for a util character in most video games, Aerith isn't a very good character most of the time, but sometimes, because he's, you know, high utility, it can be really, really useful. So I think Aerith is, yeah, again, very iconic utility game design. Most game mechanics which is like, well, certain boss fights, Aerith is very good. You know what I mean? That's kind of how she is, right? And again, Barret also, lesser of frequency, but certain boss fights, he's pretty good, right? It's kind of like that. And Cloud then, not really, because Cloud is like, he doesn't have the utility, as mentioned earlier. He doesn't have enough of the skills. So Cloud, like, no, not really. He's not up there, really. And his DPS, like I mentioned, is lower than Tifa and Aerith, and even Cait, so DPS, not really either, right? What can I say with Aerith? Aerith can do, she's a ward, she can do double magic. Okay, yes, bosses that are very against magic, she can be useful, because her double every spell she throws, and you can like revert your, you can have this like strange build where you're like, you swap attack and magic, you swap health and mana, and you have double every spell you cast, and then you have everything in attack, because you get high attack and mana, but you swap it, right? So now you have like really high magic, have infinite mana basically. You play Aerith and you spam like the most expensive spells in the game. So yeah, there is some builds with Aerith. That's probably why I really think it shines then. The problem though is that I don't think there is any real boss in the game that you have to use magic on. It's kind of like in FF13, you had a boss that was immune to physical damage and vice versa and so on. So you had to like, well, in this boss I have to use a magic build, right? FF6 has some similar so on. But in this game, it's like, there are some bosses that you kind of swap in between what they're weak against. And some other bosses are just kind of, you know, resist everything and so on. There's not, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any enemy in this game where you actually just can't defeat them with either way, right? So there's no need to be like super duper magical glass cannon. You can just be super duper physical glass cannon, like Tifa is. And it's just more damage than Aerith, right? So it's like, not really. That being said though, the way I explained, right, the whole magic glass cannon, like revert your thing, everything in mana, and so on with Aerith is actually pretty good at late game. So I think that Aerith though, compared to Tifa and Yuffie and so on, Aerith grows, right? Grows on you as a character. But see, Aerith becomes stronger and stronger. So I can almost put her in A tier because she's a character that at max level, she is one of the better characters, right? So if this was purely a max level tier list, everyone is max level, then Aerith's probably A tier, or maybe even S tier, but like A tier, S tier on some bosses, right? But I'm still looking at the whole game, you know, 100-hour gameplay from level 20 to level max. So it's like you're leveling up in the game. Aerith then is much weaker, right? She gets stronger. I think one thing is obvious for her is that she gets stronger when the materia is stronger, right? So when you have like the Blizzaga, the Fira, and you can double cast Fira, and you have like, reverted your stats, and you're double casting like a Fira, for example, right? That's gonna be way more effective than double casting a Fire. So Aerith is very gear dependent, right? She's by far the most gear dependent character in the game, and again, that makes her be much better late game. So late game, she's probably an A tier character, and early game, she's like a C or even a trash tier character, honestly. So I think B is like, she is kind of, you know, average, right? Because, yeah, one of the strongest character late game, but the worst character early game. And actually, Red, honestly, is probably only good. Trash tier Red, he's only good in the beginning of the game, right, you know? He's only good at the very early levels, because that's counter he has the most value for it. So, yeah, it's opposite with Red. He's only good when he's up here, right? And then he gets a trash tier, and you're like, my god, I hate this character, I'll never play with him again. To summarize, FF7 Rebirth Party tier list. Red, insanely terrible, you have to guard all the time, takes way longer time than anything else, it's just a bad character, you don't want to guard in the game, okay? Also, Barret isn't very good either, but Barret is can like absorb damage and higher health pool to survive certain boss abilities, so better utility, and also somewhat better stats, but both pretty terrible, okay? Cloud, bad character. Unfortunately, have to have it important all the time. Bad character, not good at anything. He can DPS basically, very low utility, and his DPS is of course way lower than what Tifa and Yuffie can do. Tifa, again, take the last part 1, insanely high damage, right? Can buff herself like 3-4 times more. Incredibly best character by hitting stuff. By far the highest DPS character in the game. Best special abilities, is by far the best character. However, Yuffie, hybrid character, can both be range and melee, have every element and so on. Massive high DPS utility, right? So incredible good character for DPSing on certain different intervals of bosses and some modes. Cait, by far highest utility. Can do every ability, can heal stuff, can summon stuff, can do anything in the game. By the best character for some of the quests, easily can summon the quest you need. Always useful. Aerith, terrible early in the game, somewhat one of the best character late game, right? Because she's very materia depending, means that she's a gear character, right? So the further you get in the level in the game, the better she gets. So at end level, she's getting closer to like A tier, maybe even S tier, but she's of course a weaker early gamer. So in the end of the game, she probably is A tier, but to get up there, you have to have the perfect gear for her and everything, and you know, her utility is not much higher than Yuffie actually, and lower the cast it. So that's it, guys. If you guys, subscribe, like button, and what do you think is the best character in the game?